Equifax CEO had actually stepped down. Now, for anybody, if you've been living under a fucking rock and you have no idea what the hell's going on, I don't know how the hell you did not know about this situation. But apparently there was a big leak. Millions of people's private information was divulged in a leak. And one of the things that ended up happening, of course, is that they ended up giving out free credit freezes after they eventually were budged into that position. Initially, they were charging people for being able to freeze your credit, despite the fact that a lot of the information was divulged to no fault of the consumers at all. But Equifax still had the audacity to try to charge people initially to freeze their credit. And what ended up happening during this divulging of information is that we could potentially open up a credit account in somebody's name, and Equifax was just like, well, pretty much, yeah, it was we made a boo-boo, but we're still going to charge you to protect your information, even though we should have been doing better on our end. So anyway, this is the article from The Hill. Equifax CEO Richard Smith will collect roughly $90 million in the coming years after he resigned over the company's massive privacy breach. Smith, who announced his retirement on Tuesday, will collect about $72 million this year and $17.9 million in the coming years. The report adds up to about 63 cents for each customer who is potentially exposed in the company's data breach. So basically, and I was having this conversation actually over Twitter with somebody else who was talking about, well, we can't necessarily be too hard on this guy because, he's the boss. It was somebody in the IT department's fault who was responsible for this breach. And my thoughts were, it really doesn't necessarily even matter as to whether or not it was some other person's fault or not. It's not in my hands to necessarily go out there and chastise somebody who is in a lower position than the leader, the head man, the head honcho of the company. He is the leader of their company. He's supposed to be in a position to where he is overseeing the situation and making sure that they don't happen. And if they do happen, he provides a sort of a remedy in order to make sure that it doesn't necessarily happen in the future. And the way that Equifax just sort of executed on this decision was just not for the best. In fact, like a lot of what ended up happening, pretty much virtually all of it, was only due to the pushback. If nobody said anything, if nobody did anything to Equifax, you wouldn't have a situation where people could freeze their credits. You wouldn't have a situation where there's another story that came up a little while later on that they're now announcing that the consumers will now be able to lock their file on demand, which is a free feature they'll be bringing along in January. You wouldn't necessarily have anything like that. These people wouldn't give a fuck about that if they didn't have any kind of pushback. So without any kind of regulatory body overseeing them, then these corporations will pretty much think that they'll get away with anything. But speaking of a regulatory body, Elizabeth Warren had some comments actually about when he was stepping down. And what she had to say was, I've called for the Equifax executives to be held accountable for their role in failing to stop this breach and hiding it from the public for 40 days, which is a very fucking long time. It is not really accountable. It's not real accountability if the CEO resigns without giving back a nickel in pay and without publicly answering the questions. And this is what part of my rub is. Me as a regular everyday person, a Joe Smo or whatever the fuck you want to call it as, if I do a shitty job, I get fired for it. And if I try to get a severance package or something to get some kind of payout, they're going to fucking laugh at me all the way out throughout the fucking door. They're not going to do anything for me. But this guy, he gets fired or let go, retired, however way you want to put it. And he walks away with millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. What is that telling everybody? That it sends the signal that there's no accountability whatsoever. That these guys get paid for a shitty job. He's just a figurehead. He's nobody. I mean, what are these people? They're just rich assholes who just do virtually whatever the hell that they want. They take over these corporations. They'll run it how they see fit, make some money, and when they make a oopsie, oops, I'll just take my money and then leave, and then nobody will do anything to me, and then I'll just probably go to another corporation or just continue making money in some other kind of way. This is basically what happens, and but you know what? There's a light at the end of the tunnel because Miss Warren, and I know this is a kind of an old story, but she did actually propose an Equifax bill where basically it would give consumers the ability to freeze their credit for free. Now, under a Trump administration, I don't necessarily think that this this particular legislation would actually pass. I am hopeful it will. But, I probably would just say this for potentially in 2018. I would highly recommend that people just sort of keep their eye out for it. Elizabeth Warren has made some questionable choices in the past, but I am very, very hopeful that she'll come around when 2018 is about, and we're having all these elections going on.